I never thought I'd end up in a nursing home, not even for a short stay. But life has a way of surprising you, and sometimes those surprises teach you lessons you never expected to learn. I'm 79 years old, and 3 months in a nursing home showed me things about life, aging, and myself that I'll never forget. Some of these lessons were painful, some were humbling, but all of them changed the way I see the years ahead. Before I get into them, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You wake up in a bed that isn't yours. The walls around you are white, bare, unfamiliar. The morning light comes in through a window you didn't choose. The door opens and someone walks in, a stranger calling you by your first name, telling you it's time for breakfast. You're grateful for the help, but something inside you aches. Because today, just like yesterday, you have no say in what happens next. That was my reality for 3 months. And let me tell you, nothing makes you realize the value of your independence more than when you feel it slipping away. I'd always been strong. I took care of myself, lived on my own terms. But after a fall that left me unable to walk for weeks, I had no choice. The doctor said I needed extra care just for a little while. It'll be temporary, they assured me. But when I arrived at that nursing home, I saw people who had said the same thing to themselves weeks, months, years ago, and they were still there, waiting for a day that never came. That's when I learned my first, most painful lesson. Strength isn't just about how you feel today. It's about how you prepare for tomorrow. I met a woman named Margaret. She was 82, sharp as a tack, and had the kindest smile. But she couldn't stand up without help. I never thought it would happen to me, she told me one afternoon. One day I could walk, the next day I couldn't. And once you lose it, it's hard to get it back. That hit me hard, because I realized I was lucky. My stay was temporary. But for so many people around me, losing their strength meant losing their choices. They couldn't decide when to go outside, what to eat, when to leave their chair. Not because they were sick, but because their bodies had slowly, quietly stopped working the way they once did. If you can still get out of a chair without using your hands, if you can still lift a grocery bag, if you can still walk without feeling like your legs will give out, you have something priceless, and you have to fight to keep it, because once it's gone, it doesn't come back easily. I remember watching an old man named George. He was 88, and every morning he did something unusual. He would stand up and sit back down in his chair, over and over, gripping the sides for balance. I do this every day, he told me, grinning, because one day, if I don't, I won't be able to. That stayed with me. And when I got home, you better believe I started doing the same. The second lesson I learned: loneliness is more painful than any illness. In the beginning, I thought I would be fine. I had books, I had the television, but nothing prepares you for the quiet. The kind of quiet that seeps into your bones. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder if anyone is thinking about you. I saw it in the faces of so many people around me. Some had family that visited every week, but others sat by the window, staring outside, waiting for someone who never came. I remember a woman named Alice. She had been there for over a year. One evening, as we sat together watching the rain, she whispered, "I used to have so many friends. Now, I just have memories of them." That moment broke my heart, because I realized how easy it is to let connections slip away. Life gets busy. Kids grow up, friends move, or they pass on. And before you know it, the people who once filled your days are only names in old photographs. If you still have friends, call them. If you have children, reach out, even if they're busy, even if you feel like you're intruding. Because one day, you might find yourself sitting by a window, waiting for a visit that never comes. The third lesson: your attitude is what decides how you age. Not your body, not your circumstances, but the way you see the world. I met a man named Frank. He was 95 and he had lost almost everything: his wife, his mobility, most of his eyesight. And yet, every morning, he woke up smiling. "I've still got stories to tell," he'd say. "And as long as I have stories, I have a reason to wake up." That's when it hit me. Aging isn't just about what happens to your body. It's about what happens to your spirit. I saw people in that home who still laughed, still learned, still had dreams. And I saw others, much younger, who had already given up. The difference wasn't in their health. It was in their hearts. If you wake up every day thinking about what you've lost, about what hurts, about how unfair aging is, it will age you faster. But if you wake up with curiosity, with gratitude, with even a tiny bit of excitement for what the day might bring, you'll stay young, no matter what your birth certificate says. After 3 months in that nursing home, I walked out with a cane in one hand and a promise to myself in the other. I would never take my independence, my relationships, or my outlook on life for granted again. And if you're over 60, if you still have the chance to move, to connect, to choose the kind of person you want to be, don't waste it. Because one day, you might wake up in a bed that isn't yours, staring at a window you didn't choose, and wondering why you let life slip away when you still had the chance to live it. She patted my hand. They do. But life keeps going, and that's not a bad thing. That night, I lay in bed thinking about what she had said, and I realized she was right. The world wasn't moving on without me. It was just moving, the way it always had. And it was up to me to decide if I wanted to keep up or stay stuck feeling sorry for myself. The truth is, we can either be bitter that life keeps going, or we can find a way to be part of it, no matter where we are. Maybe we can't always be there in person, but we can call, we can write, we can show up in different ways. Because feeling forgotten is just as much about what we do as it is about what others don't. That's when I made a decision. Instead of waiting for people to reach out to me, I started reaching out to them. I called my grandchildren, even when I thought they might be too busy. I sent messages to old friends, just to check in. And you know what? They responded. They were happy to hear from me. It wasn't that they had forgotten me, they just assumed I was okay. Sometimes people don't reach out because they don't realize we're waiting for them too. So if you're feeling lonely, if you feel like the world has moved on without you, take the first step. Because life will keep going, whether we watch from the sidelines or find a way to join in. The sixth and final lesson: the most valuable thing you can give isn't money, advice, or even time. It's presence. There was a woman in the home named Dorothy. She had Alzheimer's. Some days she barely remembered where she was. But every evening, at exactly 6 p.m., her son would come sit beside her. He wouldn't ask her if she remembered him. He wouldn't try to remind her of old times. He would just sit there, hold her hand, and talk to her about his day. One night, I asked him, "Does she ever remember who you are?" He smiled. Not always, but that doesn't matter. She knows I'm here. That moment broke something inside me because I realized how often we think that words or grand gestures are what matter most. But in the end, it's not about what we say. It's about showing up, being there, letting people know they are not alone. I thought about all the times in my life when I could have been more present, when I could have put my phone down, when I could have listened more instead of thinking about what I was going to say next. I thought about all the people who just wanted me to sit with them without fixing, without advising, just being there. And when I got home, that's exactly what I started doing. So if there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this: be present for the people who matter to you. Not just when it's convenient, not just when you have something to say, but in the quiet moments, the ordinary moments, the moments when just sitting beside someone can mean the world. When I finally left the nursing home and stepped back into my own house, it felt both familiar and strange. My chair was still in the same spot. My books still lined the shelves. The smell of my home still lingered in the air. But something inside me had changed. The first few nights, I found myself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the people I had left behind. Richard, who struggled to lift a spoon. Linda, who reminded me that life keeps moving whether I'm part of it or not. Dorothy, whose son sat beside her every evening, even when she didn't remember his name. I thought about the laughter we shared, the tears we hid, the wisdom we traded like currency, hoping that someone, anyone, would understand. And then I thought about the life I had before I entered that place, the way I had been living without really seeing. I had spent so much time worrying about what was next, what I might lose, what I might regret, that I had forgotten to just be where I was. And that brings me to the last lesson, the one that took me 79 years, 3 months in a nursing home, and a lifetime of missed moments to fully understand. Happiness isn't something we wait for. It's something we choose. There was a woman named Eleanor. She was 86 years old, confined to a wheelchair, with arthritis so bad that even gripping a cup of tea was a challenge. But every morning, without fail, she wheeled herself to the window, looked outside, and said, "What a beautiful day," even when it rained, even when the sky was gray, even when she was in pain. One day, I asked her, "Eleanor, do you really think every day is beautiful?" She chuckled and said, "No, not every day. But I decide to find something beautiful in every day." That moment stayed with me because I realized how often I had waited for happiness to come to me, like it was some grand prize waiting at the end of my struggles. I kept thinking, I'll be happy when my pain goes away. I'll be happy when I feel needed again. I'll be happy when things are different. But Eleanor? She didn't wait. She found something to smile about right where she was. And if she could do that from a wheelchair, with hands that barely worked, and a body that had betrayed her, then what excuse did I have? I started paying attention to the way the morning light stretched across my living room floor, to the way my coffee smelled, rich and warm, to the way my grandson's voice lit up when he called to tell me about his day. I started saying, "What a beautiful day," even when my knees ached, even when loneliness crept in, even when I didn't feel like it. And you know what? The more I said it, the truer it became. So here's what I want you to know, more than anything else. Aging isn't about what you lose. It's about what you still have. You have today. You have the chance to move, to laugh, to pick up the phone and tell someone you love them. You have the power to decide right now that you are not going to spend whatever time you have left wishing for something else. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many years we live. It's about how we live the years we have. So choose to find joy. Choose to be present. Choose to love the people in your life fiercely without hesitation. And most of all, choose to wake up every morning, look out the window, and say, "What a beautiful day." Because I promise you, when you do that, even the hardest days become a little softer, and life starts to feel a lot more worth living.